In this lesson we're going to learn about queries. You need to know what a query is. Now for simplicity, a query is a question. So we are now today looking at your database, going to be asking your database questions. Before we get on to our questions or our queries in our database, let's have just a quick recall of our knowledge that we need to know. Reminder that you've got your knowledge organizer with all the key facts you need to know about databases, and you need to be reading this regularly and learning what these words actually mean. And to test some of that now, we'll move on to your knowledge recall, and there are 4 questions that you need to answer, and put your answer is in your ePortfolio. Those 4 questions are: what type of database has linked tables? And that's from last week. What is that called? So what type of database has linked tables? What data type is it when there is a tick box? So that's when on your database you've got a box you can tick rather than inputting data. What does HTML stand for? What does each letter stand for? And what is the name of the folder that contains all the website documents, the files and the folders? So you can pause the video and answer those questions. Hopefully you remembered that it's a relational database when you've got tables linked together. The yes/no field is where you have a tick box so you can answer information, sometimes known as Boolean. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and the folder that contains all the files, folders and images and everything for your web page is called the root folder. So today we're going to learn about databases and how to search a database to answer questions. We call those queries, so it's really a question about your database. So we're going to create a basic and a dynamic query today. We'll start with a basic and move on to a dynamic query, and maybe then we can get on to the point where we're searching for that Boolean query, the tick boxes, if a box is ticked or not. So just a reminder, some keywords that you should be familiar with: database, Microsoft Access, store, search, table, field, field names, record, data, information. Query you now know is a keyword, being a question. Boolean we know is like a yes, no, on, off, one or the other. Filter, sort and find. So looking at a query, I've already said that a query is a question. It's looking at conditions of the database and showing all the answers that meet those conditions. So the example I've got here on the screen is looking for all the superheroes that are male as their gender. So we could query that. We can ask the question to the database and the results will come out of all the males. One way to improve this is we can then add a second question into the same query where we're looking for all of those males that are between the ages of 31 and 35. So we can have an AND query where we're asking 2 different areas, but we'll start with a simple query, and that's what we're going to do here. So you need to open up your database, and when you open up your database, remember that it will look as if nothing's there, but in your objects on the side we've got our items for our database. Here's our table. I can double click the table, and you might have enable you need to click, so click that, but here is my table of all my superheroes. Now we could look through here and find all the males and copy those, but it's a much easier way, and that's what we're going to show you here. And the instructions are at the same time, so we click on the ribbon, we click create, and we're looking to create a design of our query. That's this button here, design query. And then what we need to do is we need to tell it what tables to look into. At the moment we've only got one table, so that's fine. So I can add that table and then I can close it. So I've now got the information from my table here. And what I can then do is just drag in the words. I'm just going to move to the next slide. We can then drag in the words you want to include. Now you can just double click them all, so I can double click ID. If I just put this up here, you can see it, and it will appear in my field name here. ID, double click name, double click age, or you could drag them into the next field name. Your choice how you do this. Eye color, gender, and superpower, type of power, the sidekick, and all the information about them: strength, superpower, goodness and evil. And they've all appeared in the fields at the top of my query. So anything we put in our query will show in our results. You might decide that you don't want some of these. That's fine if you didn't want them in there. So we've added that information in now into them. We're now going to search, as in the diagram here, we're going to search for all of those that have a gender of male. Gender of male. Okay, so what we're doing here is underneath gender, level with my criteria. This is really important. So level with criteria, underneath gender, I can just put speech marks and male, close the speech marks. And I can then, once I've written my query, on my tab button here, I can then just run it. So, where are we? I'm just going to maximize this so it can be seen. I'm not. Click design and then run. Now I'm actually going to pin my ribbon so we can see what's going on. So design and run. And then it's listed all of the characters that are male. I can go back to design of my query, and under gender, I know they're all going to be male, so I can untick the male box. Untick to show that one. And again, I can run it, and now it's run it again without wasting part of my table being male, because I already know they're all going to be male. So that's what we've done there. We've run our first query, and we've got all the superheroes that are male. So that's creating a static query. So we click run to run it, design to go back into design of it. And I can always save this query to be used later. And what we need to do, we can click save. So on my query, I can just click save. That's what I'm working on. It'll know that it's query 1, but I'm just going to change that to query male superheroes and click OK. Now when I save that, it goes into the objects on the left under queries. So it's here. I can see all the other queries I'm creating, and I can close that down. Right click, close that, and anytime I want to just find out all the males from my database, I can just double click that query and it will run that query. So that's a static query. Nothing's changing in that. Nothing's changed at all. So that's my first static query that I've created for males in my database. So you've got a few tasks to do for your ePortfolio now. You need to create a query and screen print that into your ePortfolio, explain what that query is doing. It'll be nice then for you to create 3 additional queries. So I've given 3 suggestions here, but it's up to you what you create. I've got all superheroes with blonde hair. And then I've got all superheroes with black hair and blue eyes. So what I'm going to do on that one, I'm just going to show you how to create that. So I'm going back to create, query design. I'm using this table so I can add and close that. Now I'm going to just click that first one, hold down shift and press the down key on my keyboard and drag them all into the first field, and they all suddenly appear. So it's a quicker way of dragging everything in. So we were going to look for, if I just remind myself what we're looking for, black hair and blue eyes. So hair colour, I can put in speech marks black, and eye colour, speech marks blue. So this is an AND query because I'm looking in this field and this field. Now when I run that, again clicking the run button, I end up with just one character in my database. Wolverine has black hair with blue eyes. And again, I can save that as query black hair and blue eyes, and that will now appear in my objects as queries. So that's 2 queries I've now created. And when we are looking for numbers between, we're using the greater than and less than. So I've not shown you how to do this, so I'll just give a little clue as to this one. So again, I'm going to go back to create, query design, and use the same table, add and close. Once again, I'm just going to select the first field, hold down shift, select all those and drag those in, or I could individually drag them in. And when it comes to age, I can just put in with my operators greater than, I'm going to put in here 40, greater than 40, and less than 100. So I'm just going to run that. No superheroes come up. Let's just go back to my data. So I'm going to design. I'm just going to leave it as greater than 40 and run that. So these are all the ones greater than 40. Again, I'm going back to here. I'm going to just try it less than 50 and I should get 2 now. Greater than that. And less than 50. Now when I run that, so now I'm getting the ones that are greater than but less than 50. Let's just check our design. Greater than 40 but less than 50. So there we are. So that is looking at our operators of greater than and less than, and using numbers and using an and in the same field. So again, I can save that and I should just call it query greater than 40 and less than 50. So you've got a few queries there that you need to create. I can double click on my table and go back to my table anytime I want, or right click and close all the tabs I've got open just to tidy things up and just go back to my table. So that's what we've created with our simple queries, building into more complex queries. And we're looking for you then to show some simple queries, some static queries in your database. So you can pause the video and complete those queries and put them in your ePortfolio. The next stage is to look at a dynamic query. And this is when a database becomes more useful and we can run the queries over and over again. So I'm just going to create a new query. And this time I'm going to look at hair color. So find all the people with certain hair color. And when I run my query or create my query, so I'm just going to query design. I'm going to add this table and close it. Again, I can select all the elements into my query design, into the different fields. And when it gets to hair color, so I'm level with criteria, under hair color, what I'm doing is I'm putting this in a square bracket. What hair color? Close the square brackets. So it's not looking for a particular color at the moment. It says what hair color. When I run this, it then comes up with a box asking me what hair color. So I can put in black and click OK. And then a list of all my superheroes with black hair appear. I can go back and run it again, or first of all save it. So query hair color, click OK. And every time I click the query hair color, it will ask me that same question. I'll just close that first. Query hair color. What hair color? Now I can put in purple and see if I've got any superheroes with purple hair. And I have. Fish Face has purple hair. So that's what this query does. Every time you run that and close it, every time you run it, it will ask the same question. So I can ask this time, have any got white hair? And I do get 2 with white hair. So that was a parameter query or a dynamic query. That information is there. So you can have a go at creating your own dynamic query, saving it, showing the evidence in your ePortfolio. So you can pause the video while you complete that task. Okay, so we need to remember to save our database. We're going to continue working on that as we progress. Just as a recap, if I close all my objects from my table, close all, We have our table. You can always add extra superheroes to this. We've got our queries that we've created. And I'm going to show one last one. I'm going back to create, and this is an extension task. Going to query design. I'm going to select everything from this table. So selecting all my information, dragging it in there. And one of our fields was a Boolean, if they've got superpowers or not. So in the criteria, I'm just going to put in speech marks, yes. So when I run this now, it doesn't like it. So the key here is we put in yes, but without the speech marks, because it's not looking for a bit of text. So what you need to do is in your query design, go back to the design, it's just yes, or could be just no. So again, I can have all my superheroes. I'm just going to close, just going to leave that, click run. So these are all the superheroes I've got that do not have a superpower. So remember, when designing that one, I've left out the speech marks. It's just a yes or a no. And I can save that. And this one I'm going to just call query no superpower. And click OK. So I've now got that query saved as well. So you can put that in your ePortfolio and explain that one. Remember to save your work, and we will be moving on with databases more next lesson.